Running a call center is tough. Leading a sales team is a challenge. Luckily, your hosts know what it takes to succeed. What you can expect from your two guides? Conversations that won't be overly scripted, definitely not salesy or boring, just filled with as much value as possible. Each week, Jason and Oliver will bring you topics to help scale your team, increase profits, and actually feel like you are winning. So, if you are ready to up your game and become the best in the business, tune in, take notes, and be prepared to learn. And here they are with another episode of Call Center Confidence. It's Jason Cutter and Oliver Catt.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to, this is episode 21, my friend Oliver, of the Call Center Confidence. We have broken through the 20s. We are now moving on up. Welcome, joining me, Mr. Oliver Catt. How are things? What's going on?
Good. Thank you, Mr. Cutter. All good in the hood. Yeah, episode 21. Wow, that's monumental. We're rocking and rolling now. You know, we're talking a long time. We're almost like 6 months in, if you want to break it down that way.
When you put it that way, that's a long time. I even got dressed up today, as you see here. I decided to put on a jacket. I can't confirm or deny actual pants, but I do have a jacket on, so at least we're formal there. And actually, there's a reason for the jacket, which we'll talk about in the show. Updates for people. So all the replays are available. If people, if you're checking this out and you're want to play and catch up, you're like, where have these dudes been for the past 6 months of my life? I could have used them in helping build my call center confidence. Callcenterconfidence.com has all the episodes, all the replays. They are also on my YouTube channel for now, and we'll work on getting that set up. Some are on Instagram. You can find them on LinkedIn. Most all of them are on LinkedIn, on our business page, on the Facebook business page. We have a lot on there. We're working on some short clips too. And of course, there's the Call Center Confidence podcast available everywhere podcasts are sold, on all the streaming platforms. So if you want to binge listen, and if you're like me, you do it at 2x speed, and you want to hear us sounding like chipmunks at as fast as possible, then check out the podcast.
Yeah, so much going everywhere. Do you know what? I love that 2x speed that you mentioned. I've only just found the pleasure that is 2x speed on WhatsApp voice notes. I didn't know that existed. Now
you didn't know that? Oh,
incredible. Yeah. I love that thing, especially when I drop like a 9-minute, what I call a podcast on WhatsApp. It's crazy. But yeah, we are everywhere. It's great. Episode 21, helping you guys build your confidence in call centers. And it's not just that. And I want to reiterate that. You know, I've spoken to a lot of people recently, and they're saying how much it's benefited them, how much they're getting out of the value that we're kind of delivering each week. And I think it's important to really kind of note that, remember, I know we called it Call Center Confidence with Cutter Catt, but a lot of these skills are transferable into other jobs, other roles, other responsibilities. If you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're working in HR, like we spoke about last week, you know, a lot of it is applicable in a lot of industries. I mean, our niche and our expertise come from the call center industry itself. But, you know, it's something that if you want to learn about management, if you want to learn about leadership, if you want to learn about training, onboarding, quality assurance, HR, God knows wherever else we've gone in the last 21 weeks, then make sure you're tuning in, make sure you're listening. Tell all your friends about it, because somebody will get some. One person in particular who reached out to me owns a food distribution group, and they listen in regularly to get advice on their leadership and train their managers. So look, there's a lot of people out there tuning in. I feel massively underdressed now compared to you. I wish I got the memo. I'd have put a jacket on, but
I should have let you know, but I just wanted to see, you looking good today. Well, and I think the key is, like you were talking about, that I see this very applicable to anything that's sales related. I mean, I have a retail furniture client that has retail locations, and obviously the QA part and recording conversations and listening is tough to translate. You can do it. In fact, they even have mystery shopping programs where you can really see what reps are doing. If someone's got the little spy camera on their glasses or on their jacket, but a lot of it can just apply because it's very general. It's very much principles that you can apply, especially as we've talked about it, where call centers were in person, like in an office, then everyone run remote, some are hybrid. That has now made it so a lot of these things apply to any industry. So if you have a team of outside field salespeople, you might not have taken principles from call centers in the past because it's two different worlds, but now it's all kind of remote and it's all kind of field, and it's kind of how do you manage people and do things effectively no matter where your team is at.
100%. 100%. So, all right, talking about all that good stuff, Jason, where are we headed today?
So one of the things that happens in business, and let's just say life, is that there's no such thing as stability. And anyone who's tuning in, if you saw the post that I made about this when we scheduled it, that is a fallacy. There is no such thing as stability, right? You're either growing or you're dying, right? Cells are either growing or dying. A plant is either growing or dying. Like, there is no such thing as stability. Now, it's the hope and goal of people, especially in their life, especially if you've gone through tough times. You're like, please just give me stability, level things out. When you're running a company, there's times where you maybe you're hitting a growth phase. It's, no pain, no gain. So it takes a lot of work to grow, and you just want stability. You just want calm. You just want an off day every once in a while. The challenge with that is that's not really a thing. That doesn't happen for very long because, again, there's no such thing as stable and constant, especially if you're an organization full of humans and you have big aspirations and goals. Things will need to change. So the topic today is change, dealing with change, how to effectively incorporate change, manage change, which I don't think you can really manage it, inspire it, whatever words we want to use, and where that fits in, especially in a call center, and especially in a sales team, again, especially with humans who do not want to change and may not understand the reason for it.
Is the grass always greener on the other side? That's the question, I think, today, as well. Not only that, people deal with change left, right, and center in these industries. New management, new people, new process, new systems. There is so much on the table. This is a very large conversation. I think something that Jason and I have been brewing in the background for a long time. Nobody likes change. People sometimes are afraid of change. What about you? Do you like change, Jason? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing?
So I will say that I like change. However, I think there might be an asterisk or a caveat to it. I'm really open to change and okay with change. I've really opened that up in my life. People who know me know that I moved from one side of the country to the other like 4.5 months ago. We'll call it 5 months ago. Just totally uprooted my life and then moved. So I'm pretty open to a high level of change. And with that being said, there's still a comfort zone and things that we do. And what I've found with people is in some areas of their lives, they're open to change, right? Maybe someone who's open to a new restaurant or eating new food or maybe new places, but they like having a stable job. They like knowing what their routine is every day. They like living in the same town and they can't imagine moving out of that comfort zone. And so I think that's one of the big things when we talk about change is it's not just universally like, how do you embrace change? But, where are you open to it? Where are you not? And then how does that fit in business? How about yourself? Where do you see your comfort level change? On a high level or on a low level?
Do you know what? I'm in the middle with this, right? Because there are times when I seek change. I strive for change. Because for me, if you're not changing, you're not evolving. If you're not evolving, you're not getting better at what you've learned. And that was instilled to me by one of my best managers that I ever worked for. Nearly 10 years ago now. But at the same time, I am a creature of habit. And I do like things the certain way. I know that I have to do X, Y, and Z when I know that I'm doing this for that person, that for this person. So for me, it's a bit of both. It's a mixture. In work and in a working environment, when I was an employee, and I was that employee of this person that I'm talking about, he pushed into me that, I should always be constantly evolving and changing. And I think that stuck with me. So for me, it's always about making things better in that environment. But if I know I've got a routine, I like to stick to a routine. I know that really contradicts what I'm saying. And I don't like to contradict myself at times. But I do like things the way they are. I've had phone calls from managers before when they phone me up out of the blue and they've gone, "Hey, look, I know you're," this one always says to me, "I know you're on vacation, but your manager X has just left the business and I'm now your boss." Okay. So I think for me, I think that's a really good talking point today, especially in the working environment. Do we like change? And I know we talk about change management, we talk about stability, and I know you brought up all these funky, real, excellent points that I've got a feeling are going to stick with us for the next couple of episodes. But let's talk about leadership change. I think it's a great starting point there. So for me, from a leadership perspective, do you think change in a call center environment or any office environment, as we're talking about a minute ago, do you think everybody can always be prepared for that? Do you think people should be prepared for it? And I also kind of want to add in there is like, should we be looking at it from above and below when these types of changes happen in that environment? And what I mean by that is so many people higher up focus on, okay, this person's leaving or this person's being removed. Do they think about the people beneath, the direct reports of this person that's either leaving, being forcibly forced out the door, or whatever it might be? And do you think that companies in that environment look at it from that level, or do they focus at the top? Where do you see it?
Well, I think there's a lot in there to unpack. So hopefully this isn't one of those 9-minute monologues that you want to fast forward on your.
Go back and forth. Don't worry.
Yeah. So I think there's a few things to keep in mind. I mean, one of the things that I learned early on when I was leading and building a sales team, and then started being what I would tell everybody in interviews when I would hire them and tell them about what they should expect, was letting people know that change is a constant. I promised it. I guaranteed it, that there will be change. And this is the line I've said. If anybody is watching this or watching this replay or listening to it, and I've ever interviewed you, this will sound very familiar, which is change is a constant. And not just because we want to change, right? Not just, hey, it's Tuesday, let's just change it where everyone's desks are and just mix it up, but because there's a reason and we want to do it and there's a business need for it. Ultimately realizing that the goal of a business is to succeed, make revenue, have profit, hire people, service customers. So if there's change that's happening, there's a reason for it. At least somebody thinks there's a reason. Or like you're saying, if a manager leaves, it wasn't something that was wanted, but we have to deal with it. I think the best thing is really to be successful with this when we talk about change, especially from the leadership side on down, is having a culture of people in the organization and a corporate culture that understands the value of change and embraces change, which is so important. And Rich just chimed in, put in the chat, yeah, so change is a constant, definitely good. And that's a great reminder. Anybody who's watching this, please make sure to like this, to share it, put it out there in the community. Even if you're watching it now, leave your comments too. Talk to us about change, what you think as we're going through this. We want to get this out to everybody. I think the change thing is it's got to be a part of the company culture. One of the things I see is where companies don't make it known to their employees that they want to change, they want to evolve, they want to grow, they want to succeed as an organization. And so people think, I'm going to go to this job and I'm just going to get to do what I do and come in at 8 and leave at 5 and Monday through Friday and then have this stable work, right? Like those, especially in call centers and sales organizations, this isn't a factory where you're pulling the same lever for the next 40 years to make widgets for the next 40 years, right? Like that is not what we're talking about. And that doesn't exist anyway. And so I think both from the top down, as far as the culture goes, and then the bottom up, people understanding they're on board with a company whose culture is around change to succeed and win. What do you think when you see those two sides of it?
Yeah, no, do you know what? I agree. I think, as you said, change is a constant. Rich agreed. I think, I think you're absolutely right with that. I really want to touch on a point that you talked about, about people coming in just expecting to do their bit and get out, and the way that people operate. I've seen that work. I've seen that not work. I've also seen people come in like a bull in a china shop and, try and change everything very quickly. Again, a lot to unpack with the points that you're talking about. And I think it's right, because these are things that people want to know, but they sometimes don't want to ask the questions, or they're too afraid to say something. One of the last companies I worked for, the title, and I'm not going to say the company's name, but the title was blah, and then in brackets we always said blah, subject to change, and that was the monologue that everybody preached, every single person, right down from the guys on the phones all the way through to the MD, the operations directors, and everybody, because at that point it was always subject to change. And I think in those environments you have to be prepared for it. To touch on a big comment again from Rich, change can be difficult for some. I find people generally don't like change done to them. I've always tried where possible to include the people who will be affected by the change to be involved in the scope and the delivery of the change, basically empowering them through said change. And I think that's a very poignant point, is the fact that you keep people involved, you keep people in the loop, especially if it does involve them. There is nothing worse than all of a sudden something coming out the blue or down the pipeline that's going to affect you. It's going to affect your team. I worked for a client over the last 18 months where software changes were happening all the time because they found the new shiny penny. Mm-hmm. And in that shiny penny, they weren't telling any of the guys in operation. And the problem you had with that is that these changes would come in, and then all of a sudden they go, but what you've just done is great, but you've just broken this, and this because you didn't consult us in the operation. Now that's not to say, you should always have your managers involved in everything, because, sometimes you do have to have that, decisions at the top. You have to have that private and confidentiality, clauses and NDAs and all that kind of stuff. But at least if you're going to change something operationally, or as Rich said, if you're going to affect people, you should get their input. You should get their buy-in. I think is probably one of the most important lines at that point, because if they're not brought onto your journey, if they're not, drinking the Kool-Aid with you, then when this change comes in, it's like, bam, wall in the face. What's going on? And I think you're going to run into a couple of problems. So my message, my factor, all call center managers, VPs, operations, senior directors, sales directors, COOs, CFOs, whoever you are, guys, if you're going to drop something on the operation, make sure they understand it works, make sure they understand how it works, and give them a chance to ask questions. I've seen it go horribly, horribly wrong if it's not done the right way. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think as you're talking about it, I'm thinking of how this frames up different in my mind. I've never thought of it this way. And so literally coming to this conclusion as you're sharing some examples, both the bull in the china shop, as well as we're just going to go after the shiny new object or pick this thing, is dysfunctional change, right? Mm-hmm. It's when it's a dysfunctional change that is occurring, and the dysfunctional change, as you're describing, especially those two scenarios, I'm reflecting back, like almost like my life is flashing before me in reverse of all the times I have seen these things happen, is that dysfunctional change is usually the result of somebody's self-centered or self-interested motives that are driving that decision. So if we look at this, the bull in the china shop example is somebody who comes into the organization. Many times what happens is it's somebody who feels like they have to make a name for themselves or prove their value or assert some kind of control. And then they've got to put in changes. They've got to make changes for the sake of changes so that it's their identity on it. Essentially, they're marking their territory and saying, okay, we're going to change the script because this is what I think works. And I don't care what you guys have been doing. This is my way now. And here's what we're going to do. Or I'm going to institute this or put this in place. And where that's really dysfunctional is when that's done really early on before even analyzing it and looking at it like, let me get into this leadership role and be there for 30, 60, 90 days, assess what's going on, and then see what would be productive versus what would be just me doing my thing. And then if we also look at that other example, and people can't see it because it's focused on me, I can see you laughing on my other screen, which is funny because you know this is true. Is the other example that you said, which is putting in, let's say, software, for example, that one department wants, and it's literally going to break other departments, other parts of the operation, parts of the process. Again, that's dysfunctional change that's self-centered on that silo, usually sales, who says, we want this thing because we want to do this. Or, and I've seen this too, the tech team, the technology side says, oh, we think this thing would help. And then it causes this change that doesn't work. And again, it's dysfunctional. And the part of my mind that makes this so dysfunctional is that it's that selfish, self-centered on the individual or the department, the silo, and not the whole mission, how it affects everybody, and then ensuring that it's in the best interest of everybody. Doesn't mean everyone has to like it or agree, but that it is in the best interest of everybody. So
I don't even know what to say. I think both points that you raised just brought back alarm bells that were going off in my head of companies that I've worked for, of clients, especially clients over the last couple of years that I've been working with. I'll give you an example. I think it's always relevant to talk about examples in these situations because, everybody can relate to them one way or another. I had a client where somebody left and they were replaced by somebody who had experience, but it was an internal movement. And I witnessed it. And they talked a good game, right? They were very good at managing up, but sucked at managing down. But this person wanted to put their name on everything. And when you said it, this is what started me off with my laughter in the background. I watched this person literally obliterate their predecessor's name from everything. And in the process, rocked so many people that this person's name couldn't even be that the new person, no one even wanted to mention their name because of what they'd done in the wake. I mean, literally, it was tidal waves going off everywhere because they were like, I'm here, I'm new, I'm the new way, and instigated new ideas without consulting people that were actually ideas from 2, 3, 4 years ago that didn't work. Now, it's not to say don't ever try something that's not worked before or whatever, but in that environment, these people even turned around and said, don't talk about it. And it's when you get clients like that and you see it, and I was there, I witnessed everything. It happened. It went that way. The same way I worked with somebody recently who wanted some senior level coaching, and the same thing. They witnessed the same change throughout, which is why they wanted the coaching, because they wanted to get people back to the root causes of the changes and where things broke. And I think in that moment they started to realize what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. And luckily, I think things were said and things were done before bridges were broken and gaps were broken. And I think that's an important point. The other thing you want to talk about is software. When things break in software, especially in call centers, it's something that nobody likes because ultimately you're running a business. But there are so many now software providers out there offering everything you will say. And look, we know a bunch of them. We're involved with a lot of them, and some of their products are great. So when it comes to SaaS products and SaaS companies out there that are offering this change, don't turn your nose up at it, because I think sometimes people out there don't realize some of the benefits, the cost implications, and the return on investment you can get from e-learning platforms and sales tools and speech analytics and QA platforms. There's so many. I mean, there's too many to mention. But don't be afraid of new platforms. That's a big piece of advice for anybody out there. That was a long piece for me. I'm going to shut up now.
Well, no, it was a good end of the spectrums, and it's again, I think we could both go on and on about examples of people going into a leadership role and feeling like they've got to change things. I've even seen salespeople, frontline salespeople, want to come into a role and change everything. I, in fact, had this guy. I still remember him to this day. We referred to him as Sunglass Scott because there was 2 Scotts in a new training class, and he was bald. And while indoors at work all day for 9 hours a day, wore his sunglasses on the top of his head at work and training in a call center. And so Sunglass Scott came up to me, and I was the VP of sales, so several levels above him, but I made an appearance in training and I like to get to know people. He literally came up to me in a break. It found me in the hall, like on one of his breaks, and said, "Hey, your script is pretty good. I could see why it might work for some people, but give it about 30 days and I'm probably going to rewrite it and I'll make it all better and make it work." I was like, "Okay, that sounds good, Scott." He didn't make it 2 more weeks. Just his own performance wasn't good because he just wanted to change it instead of embracing it. And I think that's something super important. And I think when you're talking about the examples, and I know examples and people are listening to this, to me, I see that as a hiring, recruiting function, right? Are you vetting someone and finding out what it is that they want to do in that role? Again, frontline or higher up. And do they understand the culture? And then it's a leadership role of setting the leadership in place or abdicating. I think, and we beat this point senseless in other episodes, but I think we just need to keep bringing it up, is that a lot of times what happens is companies bring in a leader at some level in the org chart, and they say, "You have experience in this. Hopefully you know what to do. I'm going to abdicate it to you. I'm too busy doing other stuff. Good luck." And then that person is left on their own. And then you get the bull in the china shop instead of somebody who's not able to put things in place because somebody's actually leading them. And I think that's one of the key things with that. And going into that change and coming in and how it's done appropriate. It's actually why I put on the suit jacket today as a reference to one of the biggest opportunities I had as an employee, where I was hired and I didn't even have a title. This was the company I was at years ago. I was given some weird title that nobody knew what it means. I don't even remember exactly what it meant at the time, but basically my job was to assess all of the processes and systems and everything going on and then fix them, to build training, to build checklists and operate. Like I'm really good on the sales side, operationally on sales and back end ops. Like that's also a good skill I have. So I went in, and it's funny because the dress code wasn't formal, but I went in with a suit and tie because I just wanted to make an impact because I knew the boss. And but then what I did for the first couple of months was just sit back and assess, meet with each person, talk to people, take notes, and then figure out what needed to be changed with compliance from everybody, with understanding from people. Some people even saying, "Hey, I wanted to do that initiative. I've been bringing that up for years and no one's been listening to me." One guy was actually mad because I would get things approved that he was trying to, but I was looking at it from a different perspective. But it was also a lengthy process. It wasn't day one burning everything down and starting over. And I think that's like a valuable key, right? Especially for people like you and I as consultants. When companies hire us, we also have to be careful not to just go in and start ripping everything apart, because some of it might work. Some of it might be very effective, and we don't know until we assess it, right?
No, exactly. And I love that. I mean, I want to know what happened to Sunglass Scott. Where is he now?
I don't know. Poor guy. I don't know. He's probably a millionaire somewhere selling something. I don't know. Again, that's the openness side, right? When people are closed-minded, whether they're sales or leadership, we've talked about this before. It's just being open and being a sponge before thinking you know everything. Unfortunately, the people who think they know everything, the seasoned veterans at sales and leadership, they're just going to keep bouncing around because they're going to try to do everything their way, and it's going to be tough.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I get that. So, all right, so look, let's talk top tips about what we've just discussed with these types of people coming. Oh, I've just smashed them.
Oh, hello.
Hey, there it is. Right. So, okay. Breaking everything down into a nutshell, let's give him a halfway tip point here. Let's give Jason's top 3 tips when it comes to this type of environment with the managers that we do. I'm giving you a minute to think here. Come on, right? We got this. I can see your eyes going. So, Jason's top 3 tips when something like this happens, when you've either got somebody like a bull in a china shop above or below, because you never know, you brought them in and they're coming to you with idea, and you as a manager are not ready for change. What about the team beneath, right? It could be anywhere. Wherever you're going with this type of environment, what would you suggest?
So if I had to put some tips to this, if we've got somebody, I'm a leader, I've got somebody below me, they're just trying to put in all these things and make changes. I think it's really about having a conversation, reining them in, discussing what it is that they want to do, and then taking that and validating it and appreciating that they're coming up with ideas,
Yes.
and then having a discussion about how that fits in with the culture and the mission and the vision and the core values of the organization, right? How do those changes affect and facilitate where the company is going and who the company is? I think it's also important that the second tip is always to make sure that person understands the past, because like you said, in one of the examples, sometimes what happens is somebody comes in, they want to make all these changes that have been tried before, and not that trying them again isn't going to work, but maybe we tried that before. Maybe we did that thing and it didn't work. Not that it won't work again, but we need to make sure we don't just repeat history by trying, I don't know, let's try, free food on Fridays again. Well, but if the issue wasn't fixed that caused that to fail, then it's still going to fail. So I think that's number 2. I think the first one is obviously to validate and acknowledge it. The second one is to look at the past so that you don't repeat that. And then I think the third one is to put in some timeline, say, these are all great things. We got to understand that not everyone is going to handle all of this change at once. And we want, as another mentor of mine told me, we want an evolution, not a revolution. And so what can we put in place over time? And what is the schedule, right? What would be almost like an implementation schedule of change and ideas so that we can make sure they work? And then looking at examples for, a lot of people say they want to lose weight and they want to be healthy. Then what happens is they find out about some crash diet and they go on this extreme crash diet, right? Like they're not going to eat food for the next, 90 days at all, just liquids, right? And that's such a hard change. And we have limited willpower. And that doesn't work for most humans unless you have a really big reason why. What works better is small incremental changes, right? Cut out sugars, stop eating desserts, do that for a while, and then do something else for a while, and then do something and over time, you have a compound effect. And I think that's the big key for that. So what do you think about that list, Oliver? What's your feedback?
Love them. First top tip I want to touch on is, I think, your point about reining them in, but without kind of breaking them, I think is a very valid point. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't appreciate is if somebody keeps coming to you with ideas, and I know we've touched on this previously before, if somebody keeps coming up after idea, even if they're new in the business, brand new, or even old and they've just been promoted or whatever it might be, is I think it's important not to break their spirit when it comes to something like this, because it's so easy to keep saying no if something's not going to work. Now, because it's been tried and tested, you've been there in the business when project A, B, C, and D were delivered and failed. So, no, we've already done this. We've tried it. Don't discourage them. Keep encouraging them to come back with more ideas. Keep encouraging them to say, hey, look, it's a great idea. It's been done before. It didn't work. Maybe even provide the reason why it didn't work and send them away to go and come up with a new strategy of how to implement this idea in the first place. 1, 2, 3 ways, whatever it might be. Because I think if you can give them that information, you might just be able to change the approach and maybe get a different result out of the same initial course. So that's the first point. The other thing I want to say is when you've got people with ideas, is encourage them to, as you say, what was it? You picked up on, you want to evolve, not revolve, is use that idea to get constant changes on existing processes. So you're not changing something new, you're not implementing something new, but you're adding new functionality or adding new ways of thinking around whatever it is you might be doing. So whether it's reporting, whether it's tracking, whether it's training, whether it's workforce, HR, whatever it might be, if you can evolve those scenarios and make them better and constantly tweak them, then you're going to make a whole realm of difference of whatever it is you might be delivering. So 2 points. Don't kill somebody's ideas. Keep them engaged and keep them coming back. And secondly, keep tweaking and changing. You agree with that?
I think that's great. And it's so true about killing somebody's initiative and their desire to do it, right? I mean, think about any relationship you've been in where you're like, hey, let's do this thing. I want to do this thing. Like at some point, you're just going to give up. Or that friend where, you know, you're the one that's constantly wanting to do things and they're constantly busy or don't want to do it. At some point, you're just going to give up. Like, why do I keep inviting that person to hang out or to talk or go do things? I'm just going to give up. It's just easier not to. And so you don't want to stifle that, but you want to help them understand and put it in perspective. And again, we're talking about leadership. We're talking about people below you in the organization in the org chart. This is also the same advice I would give when I'm dealing with a frontline salesperson who has ideas and wants to make those changes. Like, okay, how can you do that? How can you, change what you want in your delivery, but do it over time so you know what's working and what's not working. And I think it's just, good kind of change management and addressing that. And again, for people who are tuning in, let us know what you think those top tips are or what you found works well for dealing with a manager that's in the organization below you, that where you can affect them from a leadership role, who has filled with constant ideas or things they want to change, and how you would mitigate that. And Paul, put a comment in here. Every process should always be under review to make sure it's still a fit for business to move any business forward. Be restless to be better. I love that. Be restless to be better. And I think that's part of what we were talking about earlier, which is, change is going to be a constant. You're going to be looking at the process. You're looking at ways you can win and grow and succeed in your own life, hopefully doing that instead of like shooting for stability. I think that reminds me, Paul's part there, which we're both shaking our head. I never heard that before. I love it. Be restless to be better. Reminds me of another quote from a different mentor on the consulting side, said, always grateful, never satisfied. And that one is huge for me because it's like something happens that's good. That's great. What else can I do to make change, to make a bigger impact, right? Not just that there's no finish line, just, hey, I'm always grateful, never satisfied. How do we keep improving? How do we keep growing? Let me know your thoughts on this, Oliver. So Rich put a comment in a few minutes ago talking about including frontline agents in the change that could impact them and that it empowers them. What do you see, or where do you see that you agree with that statement, or where have you seen that to be accurate, maybe not agree with that statement? What do you think when you hear that advice?
Okay, so there's two ways to look at it. First and foremost, I support that. And I support giving the agents a voice to talk about what's going on, be involved in what's going on, especially if it affects them in any way, shape, or form. I've worked with companies, I've worked with clients, I've worked with businesses, call centers over the years where, sometimes they don't want to ask the agents, they don't want to ask the people on the front line because I think they feel like, well, why should we be going to them for ideas about our business change? And it's not about going to them, it's about getting their input. These guys are running your business, and these are the most important people. If you don't have frontline teams in place, you haven't got a business. Bottom line. Yeah. And these guys, for me, I always consider them the most important people, because if they're not doing their job, we can't succeed. We can't drive forward. And I think it's important to get their input. And when I was running training with classes and things like that, I found it really vital when I was working in-house for companies to get their feedback about, and this is change for me, for the training that my team delivered. It was training. Everybody always likes to get feedback after training, but for me, that's kind of always not really valid because it's just kind of people ticking a box. Yeah, your training was great. Yeah, woo. I think that's kind of pointless. It's more of a happy sheet checkbox exercise. A lot of people do it. What experience has taught me over the years is, for me, whenever an induction class is delivered, whether it be a 2-week, 3-week, 6-week, whatever it is, induction, is you get a 1 month post feedback, a 3-month post feedback, and maybe even a 6 or a 12, depending if you want to stretch it out that far. Telling you basically how good or how crap your training was, because you need to know whether you prepared your agents for the training. You need to know that they were ready when they left your training class. They were able to take a call. They were able to sell. They were able to deliver exceptional customer service. And if you can't deliver that, then you've definitely got a fundamental process. But people won't do that because it feels like they're getting sometimes maybe a negative response or something's not working, and then it's being pointed out that it's broken. But if you control that narrative, the same way that if you include the agents in feedback, system updates, the same way, if you put a new system in, get feedback from them, not the day it goes in, not tomorrow after it's gone in, but in a week's time, in 3 weeks' time, in 6 weeks' time, whatever it might be, because these are the guys that are using it. Before I moved into training, I used to be a team manager as well in a call center, and it used to be the fact where, I used to turn around and they used to go, "Oh, put a manager on the phone." Hey, look, these guys on the phone know more than I ever will because they're the ones doing it consistently. So 110%, I agree with Richard's comment. Going back to it, include the agents in the changes that impact them. Training, systems, process, updates, product knowledge, training, for example. Let's say that your guys are out on the floor and you need them to take training courses, whether they're frontline managers, whatever it might be. Get their input, do a training needs analysis, get their feedback on what they want to learn. Now, I'm not saying, if you've got a frontline agent that's selling telecoms and they tell you that they want to do an astrophysicist's course, you don't give them that course because it's not relevant to the job they're doing, but you at least tie it back in one way or another. It might be the fact that they want to learn how to do Excel better, which is great for long-term development and success planning. So there's a lot of ways to look at this. There's a lot of ways to figure it out. People don't like to get that kind of feedback, but I am 100% behind you, Rich. I know that was a very long-winded way of explaining it. I hope I got some nuggets of information across there for that. But I agree that, get these guys involved, get their buy-in, as I said before. And I think actually Paul's made that comment as well, somewhere in my comment section. Yeah. I'll let you go to that comment in a minute because I can't find it now. But that's my 2 cents.
So I'm going to mostly agree.
Okay.
But maybe for one of the first times, kind of not disagree, but throw some giant caveats in there and some giant small print. So I totally on board with what Rich said, what Paul also put in the comment, what you were talking about is ensuring that everybody is on board with the change, sort of. So I think it's important to make sure everyone understands what is changing in advance. Nobody likes surprises. And even if you have a really strong culture of being okay with change and everyone is flexible with it, last minute change, sudden change, hey, by the way, this is happening, that can be jarring for people. So you're not going to get away with that a lot. Sometimes, yes, but not constant. So I think one of the keys is you got to have that strong culture. Everyone has to understand it. That's part of the onboarding process. The recruiting process is having people understand, like, we're going to evolve and change. And then I think it's letting them know as far in advance as possible and, what's coming. And then here's the big thing that I've always learned that a lot of people don't necessarily do is they don't tell people why. They don't explain the business reason, the valid reason, the why behind this. So when something's like, okay, we're now buying leads from this new place, or we're now switching to this dialer, here's how it works. Good luck. Let us know if you have any questions. That's not explaining why the change happened. And I used to think it was just me because I like to know why, but most people, if they understand the why and they agree with it, and that why fits with the joint mission or vision or path that people are on, then people are more likely to accept it. And what I have found is even more than the what, the why is important, right? Like, okay, we're going to change this dialer. Okay, why, right? The actual dialer change, nobody cares about. What it does and how the buttons work, no one's going to like change and, and getting used to that, but they will if they understand why. And I think that's the key. The big thing to be careful though, and this is where I see a lot of people, a lot of organizations where they know they need to change things. They're worried about having everybody on board. They're too far on the other end of the spectrum, which is we want to make sure everybody is on board and we get their buy-in. Kind of like Paul said in the comment, which is get their buy-in so that it is more likely to happen. The problem at too far the other extreme is trying to sell them on it in advance or getting their feedback in advance like they have an option. Then the problem is they think they're in control and they can dictate whether the change is going to happen. And then what you get a lot is the prisoners are running the prison because they're dictating if the change is going to happen or if they're going to accept it. And you might end up with a mutiny. And I think that's a dangerous line where it's like, we're doing this change. Here's why. We want you to be on board. You also don't get a vote, right? Like the vote has been cast, but we do care about you. And that's a sensitive one because if you say it the wrong way on either end, you either get a mutiny, like where they think they're in control, or everyone's pissed like they don't have a voice.
I back everything that you said there. And I want to touch on a couple of points I think are valid here. The first one, the reason why I don't think the why piece that you mentioned happens is because a lot of managers, and I've seen this in my experience, I've seen it in the wild, so to speak, is that when certain managers who maybe haven't got the gravitas or haven't got the backing behind them at certain points in their career feel that if they're trying to do this, that they're trying to, the why is essentially a justification. Now, to be clear, telling them the why and justifying a decision are two very different things, guys. So you need to be aware of that. And I think Jason is completely right, is you explain the why, but you do it in a way that, oh my God, we're making this amazing change because, all right, that's not you justifying anything. You know, if somebody questions you on a decision that you make, then you never have to justify. As a leader, that's the point. It's up to you. If you want to justify, do it. I do it sometimes. I don't do it other times because sometimes, it is I've made this decision and it's sticking. And then sometimes you'll explain it. That's your justification. The why, as my interpretation from what you're saying, Jason, is to get their buy-in, to tell them about this fantastic change, to get them on that journey. And then obviously this is going into the next point that you raised about making sure, as you said, the prisoners don't run the prison, is you are telling them the great news and you get your feedback on, what changes need to be made because it doesn't fit into your current job role, not why you don't like it. So in my opinion, maybe I'm slightly wording it differently, or whether it's just a disagreement, again, I don't know. But I think you'll agree with this point, is the fact that, it's, you're telling them great success, this is the change, this is why we're doing it. And it's not what you don't like about it. I want the feedback of what doesn't work when you're following this process. That's the feedback I think we need to really obtain in this change movement. Am I agreeing? Am I disagreeing? Am I going down the same journey as you there?
No, I think that's all right in the same line. And again, the advice for anyone listening, especially if you've had issues with getting people to change or accept change that's in the organization, you can't get them to change, but you can hopefully get them to accept it more times than not, is riding that line, explaining why. Now, the only thing, as I'm listening to you talk, one of the things, and I just want to make this point because I think it's so important from my perspective, is that being a leader and having other people make a change takes selling and persuasion skills, right? I think most people would agree. What's fascinating, and this is what I realized years ago, is that those are the same skills that it takes to get a potential customer to become an actual customer. What we're talking about is actually literally the same thing, which is to be good at sales, you're getting another human to embrace change and see that a new decision is safe outside of their comfort zone, outside of what they know and are used to, and they're okay with that. Because again, if it didn't require change, they wouldn't be doing it, or they would already own it. Or if they were okay with the change, they would have signed up instantly and they wouldn't need any help persuading. And so by the fact that they have to deal with a salesperson means they need help embracing change and feeling it's safe. Those are the same skills for leaders, which is helping people feel safe, that the change is for their benefit being part of the whole, which is of the organization, and that it makes sense. And I think what's interesting, though, is what you were talking about, is getting them excited and seeing about it. You also, in my experience, maybe this is just my sales and leadership style, is I also do not want to sugarcoat change or oversell it or be too excited about change that isn't good. Obviously, it's always good for the organization, but it's like, hey, by the way, we're changing the comp plan. And it's going to be harder for you to make more money. Like coming in there and being like, hey, guys, we got some great news. This is going to be amazing. Like that's the same thing when you interact with a salesperson in your normal life who's way too excited about a pile of crap that you know they're trying to push on you. That's not really a good thing. And you can see through it, and it raises those alarm bells. I think one of the biggest things is relative to the change that you're trying to roll out to your team is have your message and your tone match how good or not good that change is going to be seen from their perspective, to just have that empathetic level. Do you agree, or are you all sunshine and rainbows no matter what the change is?
No. With this one, I'm fully in agreement. Look, it's always great when we agree on things like this, but I always like it when we disagree in certain areas, because it gives everybody different opinions to choose from. Not that we always agree or disagree with each other, but it's a good talking point. But no, I'm firmly behind those, and I think that's a great. And as you said, it's a selling skills, it's persuasion skills. Obviously, using 2 of the 4 words of the name of your book in one sentence, great. I wonder if anybody else picked up on that one.
Make sure that you're also authentic as a leader too. There we
go. But look, I'm a firm believer of that. And look, this whole conversation, I think, could go on for a very long time. And I think, as Paul put in the comments there, too rich. If you get their buying through the process, it'll be more likely to happen as if they feel like it's their idea to own and deliver on. I think those are very good points. All of the comments, everybody's got a different opinion with this, whether, you're doing it for justification, whether you're explaining the why, whether, you're, as we've said, destroying people's ideas, skills, and things like that. It's about encouraging. Change is a good thing. And I think this is kind of a good point to kind of start to wrap up where we're going with today. But I think this is probably going to lead into next week as well, because I've got a ton of other questions that I want to put out there. But change is a good thing, and people shouldn't be afraid of change. I think people are afraid of the unknown and where that might go. But if you can plan ahead, if you can see a roadmap or a journey of what this change is going to create, and I'm not saying you're going to plan for every eventuality. That's not the case. People, you have to expect the unexpected in certain times like this, especially when you're implementing something new. But don't be afraid of change. Be afraid of the unknown. And that means when you are changing, be as prepared as you can be and know what you can know in order to make your change successful. I think that's kind of where my head's at with those points. I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that.
I think the only other thing, and this might carry over because it's a much longer kind of deep dive into it, is that one of the biggest keys is to understand evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, that part of our brain that still thinks it's a long time ago and it's trying to survive and everything is out to get it. That is what's inside of your employees, in your teams, in your potential customers. That part is the truth. I see a lot of managers get frustrated when their team won't change or embrace the change and people push back. Part of it is the poor delivery and the poor rollout of that change. Part of it is just a lack of understanding and empathy to the subconscious and unconscious response that people have to change that they're not even aware of. They don't even know why they don't like the change. But once you understand that, then you can actually affect the change differently, instead of getting frustrated with people not doing what you think they should do. Instead, stepping back and going, oh, that makes sense why they're not doing it. How can I help them? Or, and unfortunately, I've had to do this as well, is realizing, oh, I have the wrong set of humans on the team that aren't going to embrace change, and they weren't hired correctly. And unfortunately, we need to reset things. And I've had that situation where big changes were coming, the comp plan, the script, the process, even the product, everything was changing about that role. And I knew none of them could make it. And my boss had me restart the whole sales floor from scratch, end it on one day and start it over on the following Monday. Because sometimes there's just a limit of what people will actually be able to change.
Yep. No, I agree with that. So look, I think this is a good point to mention that we're going to continue with the stability piece next week. Because like I said, I've got about another 10 questions that I want to drop out there. Some points that I want to discuss next week. Because the thing is, we're talking about change in leadership. We're talking about change in management. But what about managing those changes? What about also, preparing your frontline teams for those changes that are coming in at a strategic level, at a leadership level, even at a business operational level as well. So there's a lot of different areas we can cover with this next week. If you're listening live and if you're sharing this post live or whatever it is on the postcast, then make sure you are sending us any questions or any thoughts or anything that you want us to add into that conversation for next week's episode when we get out that. So drop in your comments, whether it's on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, any of the social media platforms, the website, whatever it is. I'll update the website with the latest episodes in the next couple of days, so they'll be up there. But I know that we are now officially up to scratch with our episodes on our podcast. So when will this episode be going live on the podcast, Jason?
We are pushing, and so far we've been effective last week and hopefully this week. So we do these live on Wednesdays. The podcast, it will be a podcast episode by this Friday. So if you miss it, or if you want to just hear us again while you're walking around, clean the house, driving, that's what you want to do on your weekends, listen to us, which I don't blame you in any way. That is the goal, is to have it available so that you can digest it, put things in place starting Monday, and build the call center that you want in a way that works for you.
Absolutely. But yes, don't forget, check out all the social medias. The website's up and running. We're online. Message us, get in touch, let us know. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, we're everywhere, and we're growing slowly. So it's happening in real time. So stay in touch and let us know what you want to talk about. In the meantime, we will be back next week with more stability and more change management topics. I can't even speak. I've only had one coffee today. And of course, don't forget, you can get in touch with Jason at jasoncutterconsultinggroup.com, jasoncutter.com. And I missed the other one because it went off the screen too quickly. So tell me what I missed, Jason. What was the third one?
My LinkedIn URL.
There we go. There we go. LinkedIn. Available, and the same with me, Oliver at thecatalyst.com, and again, thecatalyst.com. You can get hold of me on LinkedIn. So yeah, stay in touch. In the meantime, Jason, thank you very much for dropping some awesome bombs today. Some great tips. Loved your mid-episode top tips section. I think we need to keep that in there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. We'll keep adding that. We'll do top tips section. So every now and again. And in the meantime, from Jason and myself, thank you very much. Jason, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for embracing change as we go through this. Thanks, everybody. And we'll catch you next week.